Good evening. This is Pastor Dan at Crossroads Baptist Church. Thanks for joining us this evening. Today is March 28th, 2021, and we're going to continue our survey of the book of Acts, or the geographical survey of the book of Acts. And I wanted just to end it in the book. I'll go all the way through chapter 28 so that we have this geographical understanding of what's going to take place in the next several chapters that we're looking at on Sunday morning. So first we have chapters 21 to 23 and 23. There's nothing in chapter 22. We covered most of chapter 21 last time, but then we needed to cover this one last point, this first city here, Ptolemy, I'll get it right, Ptolemais, that's the word, Ptolemais, right there. That's in chapter 21, verse 7. Then on Antipatris and Praetorium. So Antipatris and the Praetorium here. So these three locations. So let's take a look at that. So this is just to sort of give you your bearings here as we look at the map. You got the Sea of Galilee to the north, Dead Sea to the south, Jerusalem there, right by the Dead Sea, and then we have Caesarea there. So these are all pretty common places that hopefully we have a pretty good understanding about these particular places by now. Then in chapter 21, verse 7, we have Ptolemais that's mentioned here. So up here to the north is Ptolemais, and it says this, chapter 21, verse 7, and when we had finished our voyage from Tyre, we came to Ptolemais, greeted the brethren, and stayed with them one day. So Paul and those with him are going to spend one day in Ptolemais. Tyre is just to the north of this, so it's a little bit farther north. It didn't quite fit on our map. The second city that we are going to put on our map is Antipatris, right here. And so you see that right there in the green. And that city is named in chapter 23, verse 31. 23:31. Now, this is talking about Paul's trip to Caesarea. So we talked about how Paul was taken into Roman custody this week in our Sunday morning sermon. Well, eventually Paul is going to be taken to Caesarea, also under Roman custody, and they are going to go by this city. They mention this city here. It says in chapter 23, verse 31, then the soldiers, as they were commanded, took Paul and brought him by night to Antipatris. So we have Antipatris that is mentioned here. And I was trying to remember, this city has another name, and I wish I could remember what it is, but it doesn't pop into my mind right now. So, but anyway, this is a city that's mentioned, and there's one other place that is mentioned here that we're going to need to take account of, and that is in verse 35 of chapter 23, and that's the Praetorium. The Praetorium, and so we did talk about this today. So here's Jerusalem. This is a representation of Jerusalem, and so you see on this map here, in the green there, you have the upper city. In the pink or flesh color there, you have the lower city. Then you have that sort of, what kind of shape is that? It's not quite a rectangle, but we're going to call it a rectangle. This is the Temple Mount. That's the Temple Mount, and you see that red looks like a T laid over on its side. That's going to be the temple proper, and then you're going to see the Praetorium. So right up there is the Praetorium. Now, we talked about that in our morning message as the Antonia Fortress. The Antonia Fortress. And it's right adjacent to the Temple Mount. It's connected to the Temple Mount. Stairs would go from this building down to the Temple Mountain. So this is the Praetorium. There are people who think that the Praetorium was located somewhere else in the city, but I'm pretty confident that this is probably the location that we should go with here. So this is the Praetorium. So that brings us from chapter 21 to chapter 23. And now we don't have any new locations until we get to chapter 27. So as we come to chapter 27, we see there's a whole bunch of them. And this is because in chapter 27, we have Paul's journey from Caesarea or Caesarea. Those are different ways people pronounce the name of that city, to Rome. He's going to be going on his way to Rome. So in chapter 27 and 28, we have a lot of different names. And some of these names, well, actually, most of these names only occur once in the Bible, and that they occur right here. And so let's take a look at these. The first name here, Drametium, then Myra, then Lycia, then Nidus, Crete, Salmone, then Fair Havens, Lassi, Phoenix, Clauda, Syrtus, Adriatic. Okay, you might recognize that one, Adriatic. Well, let's take a look at these. So we'll just pop up Lycia here because Lycia is a region. It's not actually a city. It's a region. So I'm going to go ahead and put that up there. And we'll come to that in a little bit. But the first city that's mentioned in chapter 27 is I always struggle with this, Drametium. Now, this city appears in chapter 27, verse 2. It says, "So entering a ship of Drametium, we put to sea," meaning to sail, "along the coast of Asia. Aristarchus, a Macedonian of Thessalonica, was with us." So you see where this place is located. It's way far in the north of modern-day Turkey, northern Asia Minor, and you might wonder, what does this have to do with Paul going from Caesarea, way down in the south east corner, the right lower corner of our map? What does this city up here have to do with that? Well, the ship that Paul gets on is from this city. That's the only reason it's mentioned. The ship is from this city. So Paul gets on a ship from Drametium. Now, the second city that we have mentioned here is in verse 5. It's Myra. Myra, right there along the coast. It says in 27:5, "And when we had sailed over the sea, which is off Cilicia and Pamphylia, we came to Myra, a city of Lycia." And so this tells us the course that Paul took on this ship is they're going to go to the north of Cyprus. That I didn't put the name of that island right there, but this island on the right-hand side of your screen, that's Cyprus. So they're going to go north around Cyprus. So they're going to head up the coast of Israel, coast of Syria. Then they're going to cut across to the left. So they're hugging the coast the whole way. So they'll go north of Cyprus, and this is this port city, Myra. Then they're going to go to Nidus. Now this is in verse 7. So look down at verse 7. We'll see there Nidus. "When we had sailed slowly many days and arrived with difficulty off Cnidus, the winds not permitting us to proceed." So they're going to arrive here. They're having a hard time traveling, so they arrive at Nidus here, which is in a city here. It's not on an island. It's on a little peninsula that sticks off of Asia Minor there. But that's going to be the next city they go to. And then the next place that's mentioned is Crete, the island of Crete here. Back to chapter 27, verse 7. It says, we sailed under the shelter of Crete, and then it mentions another city, Salmone. Salmone. And I know it's hard to tell, and the arrow is not pointing at it exactly, but right there on the tip of the island of Crete is this city, Salmone. And so they're gonna sail south from Nidus, and they're going to cut right along the edge of Crete, right to the east of Crete. They're going to hug the eastern shore of Crete, and they're going to come south of Crete. Okay, that's the route that they're taking. So they've gone up, they're hugging the coast the whole way. Now they're going to come south of Crete. And so the next place that's mentioned is going to be Fair Havens. And so Fair Havens is mentioned in verse 8. It says, passing it with difficulty, that city, that Salmone, passing it with difficulty, we came to a place called Fair Havens. So we have Fair Havens there. That's a port. That's going to be a port city or a port town. It has a harbor, and so they're having a hard time. This is the picture we get. From Myra all the way to Fair Havens, they're having a difficult time with the sailing. The weather is not helping them. And the next place that is mentioned is Lassi. And this is also in verse 8. At the end of verse 8, it says near the city of Lassi. So Fair Havens is near the city of Lassi. And that's all we know about it. It's just that much. It's mentioned that these two cities go together. Fair Haven is being a port city. The harbor, now we should note that the harbor at Fair Haven was not good for wintering in. And the picture that we're getting so far in Paul's sailing is that they are into rough weather. So this would be moving towards the wintertime when the storms would get rougher, the seas would be rougher in the winter. And so Fair Haven, while it is a harbor, it's not a harbor that they can winter in. It's exposed to the weather. And so we come to the next city that's mentioned, also on also on Crete, and that is Phoenix. So we have and this is all the way in verse 12. So following down to chapter 27, verse 12, it says, and because the harbor was not suitable to winter in, that's the harbor of Fair Havens, the majority advised to set sail from there also, if by any means we could reach Phoenix, a harbor of Crete opening towards the southwest and northwest, and wintered there. So you can see on the map, Phoenix is not that far from Fair Havens, but they weren't even confident they were going to be able to get to Phoenix because the weather was so bad. But they had a better harbor there. They had a harbor they could winter in there, and so that's why they're headed in that direction. Then we come to another island that is named, and you're going to have to look really hard for this. Now, before I put this island up there, I just want to point out, on your map, you find the island of Crete there. Then you see Phoenix there in the Burgundy. Go to the arrow end of the line there that shows Phoenix is pointing there. Now, if you come straight down from the tip of that arrow, you're going to see a little beige dot there. Okay, that's the island we're talking about, that little beige dot, okay? So that's the island of Clauda, the island of Clauda. And this is found in verse 16 of chapter 27. It says, and running under the shelter of an island called Clauda, we secured the skiff with difficulty. So they're having difficulty sailing. What happens is they leave Fair Haven and they have to run south on the leeward side of the island in order to try to get to Phoenix. Okay, the wind is just not cooperating with them at all. And then we're going to see something interesting here, and something that's mentioned that's not actually a technical place, I don't think, but it refers to a place, if that makes sense. Let me show you on the map. So the next thing that's mentioned here is Cirtus. And let me just show you. Okay, you see those circles. The lines are pointing to those circles. And let's just read about it, and then I'll explain to you what I mean. So verse 17, chapter 27, verse 17, it says, when they had taken it on board, talking about the skiff, they used cables to undergird the ship. They would put cables around the ship to hold it together in bad weather. And fearing lest they should run aground on the Syrtis sands, is what the New King James says, they struck sail and so were driven. So they took down their sail, and they were basically at the mercy of the sea at that point, but they were afraid that they were going to be stuck on a sandbar. And so the Cirtus was a name for a sandbar, and it's unclear whether these sandbars were here around Crete, to the south of Crete, or over closer to Malta, over closer to Sicily. And the reason I give you two different options is because I looked the Mediterranean Sea up on some navigation maps for boats, and from what I can tell, these were the two shallow places. And everywhere else, it's very deep in the Mediterranean Sea, but there are two shallows that we find in these two places that would relate to our story. And so that's why I say this. But this is a sandbar, possible sandbars, and they didn't want to get stuck on a sandbar because it would have tore their ship apart. The final thing that we see here that's mentioned in chapter 27 is the Adriatic, and that's the Adriatic Sea. So this is in chapter 27, verse 27. And it says, now when the 14th night had come, and so I'm going to take this, it has been 14 nights since they left Fair Haven. When the 14th night had come, we were driven up and down in the Adriatic Sea. So the Adriatic actually extends farther north between Greece and Italy and the Balkan countries in Italy, and all the way down into the Mediterranean Sea. So where you see that word Adriatic there, they were pushed around all around that area. And so the weather in the sea is just hammering these people, Paul and his company on this ship, and it's just blowing them around everywhere. They could make no headway. Remember, they're headed to Rome. That's where they want to go, is Rome. And it's taken them a long time to get there. Now let's go to chapter 28. And so we have 7 other places that are mentioned in chapter 28. Malta, Syracuse, Rhegium, Puteoli, Aptly Forum, 3 inns or 3 taverns, and Rome. So let's take a look at these on the map. So here's the map we're using. That's a little bit smaller. We zoom in here a little bit. You see the major places. You see the Greece there in the middle. You see Italy there towards the left upper corner. You see Sicily right there below Italy, that island. You see Crete on the lower right-hand side. So that sort of sets your stage, and you see the Adriatic Sea there, kind of center left to the north. So let's look at these. The first place that is mentioned is Malta. So here's the island of Malta here. This is found in chapter 28, verse 1. It says, now when they had escaped, they then found out that the island was called Malta. So this refers back to the place where Paul was shipwrecked at. They were shipwrecked on Malta. And they didn't know that right from the beginning. But this is the island where Paul was shipwrecked on. This is where he was bitten by the viper, and they thought he was going to bloat up and die, and he didn't. And so they knew something. There was something special about this guy. Then our next place that we see is Syracuse. So Syracuse is on the east coast of the island of Sicily, and it's found in chapter 28, verse 11. Now listen to this. It says, after 3 months, we sailed in an Alexandrian ship whose figurehead was the twin brothers which had wintered at the island. So they are 3 months in Malta, and now they're going to, verse 12. I guess I need to read verse 12. Let me start over. Verse 11 and verse 12 of chapter 28. After 3 months, we sailed in an Alexandrian ship whose figurehead was the twin brothers, which was wintered at the island, and landing at Syracuse, we stayed for 3 days. So they were in Malta 3 months. So they've been traveling probably 4, maybe 5 months now. They're traveling. And they still haven't gotten to Rome. And so they get to Malta, and then the next place they're going is Syracuse there. Let me back up one. Sorry about that. Then they're going to Rhegium. And this is found in verse 13. It says, so after they stayed in Syracuse for 3 days, it says, from there we circled round and reached Rhegium. So they're coming to Rhegium right there. So on the tip of the boot of Italy. And from Rhegium, they're going to go to Puteoli. So this is farther up on the coast, on the western coast of Italy, there in the brown. So verse 13 again, and it says, from there we circled around and reached Rhegium, and after 1 day the south wind blew, and the next day we came to Puteoli. So there's Puteoli up there. And then we only have 2 more places, actually 3 more places that are mentioned here. The last one's not mentioned here uniquely, but we're going to put it on the map anyway. So the first place, or the next place that's mentioned, is the Aptly Forum. And that should be 2 I's at the end of aptly. Okay? Aptly Forum should have 2 I's. It's Applii. All right. Now, the Aptly Forum was on the 43rd mile marker outside of Rome on the Appian Way. So this little settlement, crossroads, whatever it might be, was 43 miles south of Rome on the Appian Way. It was known for cheating innkeepers, so innkeepers that would cheat you. And also here was found a canal that ran through the Pontine marshes. So there was marshes between the Aptly Forum and Rome, and they were called the Pontine marshes. And this is also where some of the believers from Rome came to meet Paul at. So they had heard Paul was coming, and they came to the Aptly Forum to meet Paul. So we see this in chapter 28, verse 15. It says, and from there, when the brethren heard about us, they came to meet us as far as the Aptly Forum. And, let's go to our next place, the 3 inns, or 3 taverns, and they, as far as the Aptly Forum and 3 inns. So the believers in Rome came as far as these 2 cities, 3 inns and Aptly Forum, to meet up with Paul and to accompany him into the city. Now, the 3 inns, or 3 taverns, that's at the 31-mile marker. So it's 31 miles south of Rome on the Appian Way. And so the believers have come to meet Paul, greet him, and travel back to Rome with him. And finally, we have the city of Rome right there. That's where Paul is going to end up. And so this is the end of Paul's journey. Now, let me put this on a map for you, on a bigger map, and you can see the route that they took, okay? So they're going to start over on the far right side, lower right, in the southeast corner of our map. And they begin in Jerusalem, and then they're going to go to Caesarea. Then they're going to head up to, now I can't remember the name of that city. Somebody help me. You can't get any help when you're the only one sitting here doing the the recording. Oh, anyway, I can't remember. But anyway, you see how they head up north. They're basically hugging the coast. They go up towards Antioch. They go around Cyprus to the north side of Cyprus, and then they come to Myra, and then they come to Nidus, and then at Nidus there, they start heading south. Out of Nidus, they're heading south. They're coming towards the island of Crete. They're going to go past Salome, and then they're going to hit Fair Havens, and Lassi is right there close to Fair Havens. They want to go to Phoenix, that's also on Crete, but they're not going to make it there because of the weather. So instead of being able to hug the coast and go to Phoenix, they have to cut under the island of Clauda, which you can barely see on this map, and they have to go on the southern side of it. And then this map doesn't show it, but they don't just make a straight line from Crete to Malta. They're all over the place here. And finally, they do get to Malta, but they get to Malta because they are shipwrecked. They crack up on Malta. And then after 3 months, they head to Syracuse, and from Syracuse, they go to Rhegium to Puteoli, from Puteoli to Aptly Forum, then Aptly Forum to 3 Inns, and 3 Inns to Rome. And so this was Paul's trip to Rome. This is the last trip of Paul's that's recorded in the book of Acts. And so when we come to the end of chapter 28, the last chapter in the book of Acts, we find Paul in Rome. He's in Rome. So hopefully this helps in setting the context of what we're about to look at in the last few chapters of the book of Acts. And you get a sense of how Paul is going to be traveling. And I would encourage you, if there's any way that you can print this out, or if you want a copy of this map, it's possible that I can print it out. I don't know that I have the ability to print it out in color, but if you want one, if you don't have one of these, like in the back of your Bible or something like that, I'd be happy to provide it for you. Just let me know, and next time you come to church, I can give it to you. Okay, well, that's all we have for this evening. Pray that the Lord blesses you as you continue to live for Him.